Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for April. Now, getting together and playing games is a good thing. Whether you be on the East Coast, the North Coast, the South Coast. But if you're on the West Coast, you maybe don't just want to get together as a group. You might want to get together as a gathering. Because joining me from the Glasgow Games group, I feel so handy. I've got a couple of Andys. So I've got Andy, I've got Mr. Andrew Paul, and I've also got Mr. Andrew Bussey. Mr. Andrew Bussey is involved in the money, and Mr. Andy Paul is involved in being the president of the Glasgow Games group. So, hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
It's good to have you. Sorry for the absolutely appalling long stretch and frankly painful kind of intro. We're here to talk about a couple of things. You do have, at the end of June, you've got a special event coming up. It's you've got the Glasgow Games Gathering coming up on the 29th of June, so we want to talk a little bit about that. You've also got the general kind of group. Now, me being a horrible East Coaster and being from Fife, I'm aware of all the lovely kind of little groups around the Fife area. But obviously, we do have some listeners in kind of like the Glasgow area itself. But I mean, for people who maybe haven't heard of yourselves at all, the Glasgow Games group, do you maybe want to start by giving us maybe a little bit of a history lesson into how you guys kind of got started? Did you roll a dice?
Yeah.
Did you roll a 20? Pomp. There's a group.
Well, we started out in the back room of Games Workshop in Glasgow.
All right.
In the late mid-90s, I think.
Mid-90s, many years ago when it was still on Union Street.
Yeah, and that eventually came to an end. They had to move venue. Mm-hmm. So at that point, there was about a dozen of us, and we spent a few weeks scouring around for a venue. Found a council hall up in just north of the city centre, mm-hmm. and that was 20 odd years ago, and we've just grown from there. We started with about a dozen of us playing 40k and Warhammer, mm-hmm. and now we get up to.
Well, I think we had over 60 people last night on Tuesday.
Wow.
Playing all forms of games from 40k to Star Wars Armada to Legion to board games like the new Hellboy game.
Oh, right, okay.
Various other things like Imperator for Rome. We tend to have at least 2 roleplay groups in the hall as well. So, yeah, as Andy says, we've just grown for 20 odd years.
Yeah.
Do you run like multiple nights then, or is it just one particular night that you run on?
It's the Tuesday nights. It's just a Tuesday that we run on.
Okay.
But we've got a long session. It's 5 hours.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've got 5 o'clock till 10 o'clock, and so there's usually enough time to get a good session of something going. So I think that's how we've grown. We just provided a venue and let people turn up and bring whatever games they want and go from there. And if somebody's got a new game they want to try out, there's usually some fresh victims to give it a bash. And
that's a good choice of words.
To christen cardboard. So.
Yeah.
Have you boys both been involved since the beginning then? I mean, were you kind of... You know, when you were slipper lads, did you rock up at the good age of, like, say, 12 or 13 yourselves and kind of say, I'm going to play some games? Who wants to play some games, kind of thing?
Yeah,
pretty much. We weren't involved in the committee in the beginning. That came later, but yeah, we've basically. I think we're one of the few people at the club still that were involved right from the start, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we met, wasn't it? It was a game of 40k or something like that.
I think so. I think it was in GW Union Street. I had the unfortunate pleasure to stumble across them. And it grew from there. That's and through meeting other gamers at both Games Workshop and through the local scene. That was where we got together to the various people to start G3.
Do you? I mean, have you known each other quite a while then? Did you become friends kind of through the club, or were you aware of each other kind of before you kind of met at the kind of the group?
We met. I think we met in Games Workshop before the Glasgow Games Group was founded.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
But there's other friends that we've met through the club.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've met a lot of friends
tonight. But, I've certainly made a good few friends through the club. But Andy and I have known each other for longer than is healthy.
Must be about 25 years, something like that, at least.
Yeah,
I mean, this was back when Games Workshop, as I say, was on Union Street, and they used to run their Thursday gaming sessions. And I used to come in and obviously randomly just it must have been through gaming, met Andy here, and we kind of became friends that way. And as I say, when the club at Glasgow had to close, myself and Andy and various other people, somebody had the bright idea of, well, let's start our own club then. Because there wasn't many other places in Glasgow, I think, at the time, especially if you wanted to play a non-Games Workshop game.
That was, I think, the other thing that brought the club on was we started out with GW games, so we're all kind of suddenly started looking around and going, oh, there's some BattleTech, there's some Magic the Gathering, there's some other things.
Did you notice a kind of almost like a little bit of a decline in Games Workshop? I mean, obviously, if you look at it now, it seems to have become the kind of basically the phoenix that rose from the ashes. And some people will say, well, it never went away. GW's never gone away. But I've never seen it, I reckon, such a strong brand as it kind of is just now.
Yeah.
There definitely was. I mean, like I said, when we started, because we'd come from Games Workshop, that's pretty much all that was being played. Maybe the odd, historical World War II game or something.
Yeah.
And then in the sort of 2000s, it pretty much died away. I mean, I think we all still had the stuff, but it was just in the back of the cupboard, and we were all playing War Machine or something else, or card games or something. And then in the last year or so, I don't think I've played many games that weren't GW games now. So it's certainly
you've noticed that at the club as well. I mean, it used to be at the club you would still get the occasional game of, say, 40k or Warhammer Fantasy or something like that. But now in the last probably two and a half years, we've got generally at least 3 games of 40k on the go every night, pretty much solidly every week. We've got a core group of about 6 or 7 guys that turn up every week and they play 40k, and that's what they want to play. So, and it's great. We've all, as Andy says, we've all found ourselves coming back to 40k or Games Workshop games, with the new releases, Necromunda, all these kind of things. Certainly, as you say, they're on the rise again.
Yeah. Have you found are more people kind of bringing kind of like board games as well? Have you found that is there kind of been a change in the ratio, as well as into the number of people that are bringing kind of like tabletop versus kind of board games versus kind of role playing, or is it always kind of been kind of steady?
We've got the board game numbers are rising.
Yes.
Slowly but steadily. I mean, again, when we started out, it was all entirely miniatures games because that's where we came from. Occasionally, you get somebody who bring along a board game, usually like an old style war game, a hex and counter war game. Now there's all sorts of name your game, and somebody's playing it. What did we have last night? We had Hellboy being played. We had I think it was a game of Sushi Go on the go.
Sushi Go, Imperator for Rome, Gloomhaven. Yeah. Yeah, certainly, as Andrew says, there's been a big rise in board gamers at the group as well, and it's been quite there's been a steady increase. There's been kind of a good core of board gamers, and they seem to have, as obviously people have realised that we're also there for board gaming and not just tabletop wargaming, that we've seen those numbers grow as well.
Do you get like regularly kind of new members coming in and, just folk turning up for the first time? Do you need to kind of be mindful of making sure that, folk are turning up for the first time, that they're kind of looked after, or how do you find that? Do you kind of like go through the kind of like the Facebook group, or how do you kind of like get people kind of in and interested?
Well, obviously we've got our Facebook group. We've recently become more active on Twitter, and we've also got a web page with an inquiries email through that. But we do get people, through the Facebook group. We do get people saying, I've heard about you from friends, from other bits on the internet. And as you say, we do try to be mindful so that when somebody turns up and they're obviously, wandering around, but not in that way of, they're obviously not there to meet somebody. They're just kind of looking around at all the games. We try and say, and certainly we have our regulars, so you recognise, even if I don't know the names, you recognise most faces. Yeah. So if you see someone with a new face, certainly someone on the committee, myself, Andrew, there's a few other guys, Gordon and Mike and things, we try and say, just say hello to them, are you new, etc. Try and find out what their interests are, and maybe point them in a particular direction. If there's, if it's 40k, we say, okay, we've got a big group of Games Workshop players over there, so maybe chat to them, or we've got some board gamers, whatever, or whether they just want to wander the room and see. I mean, we don't, obviously we charge a nightly fee, but we don't charge if you're not playing. Yeah. So feel free to kind of just go around the club and have a look. A lot of the members are perfectly happy to have a quick chat about what it is they're playing. So that people can get a feel as to what happens. Yeah.
Is there games at the moment that you are kind of hoping people bring along to the club so you can get a shot of them? Is you got anything that you're kind of like, it's really like to see that kind of Gloomhaven along, and that you kind of the little ears prick up when somebody kind of brought Hellboy, kind of like the other night.
Yeah, well, certainly Hellboy drew a lot of attention last night, including from myself, because I was waiting on my Kickstarter pledge. So that drew a lot of attention. And like you say, there are, I think like all groups, you end up with your kind of a regular group of players. Yeah. So you all end up saying like, how about we get together and play, as you say, Gloomhaven or Hellboy or something like these. Yeah.
So were you all smiley when you saw the Hellboy on the table, or were you like, damn, I just dropped 120 quid in this nonsense?
No, I was. For me, it's very well done. Uh-huh. The miniatures are nice. The board game tiles themselves, they've got that kind of cell shaded comic book look about them. Yeah. It's done to a good standard. So my pledge actually showed up today, so I'm looking forward to get it on the table.
Did you go all in?
Not quite all in. I didn't go for the kind of the resin miniatures and all these kind of things. So, but yeah, I think I've got another, because they've shipped out the main game now, but there's the expansion boxes, and I think they're coming in wave 2, so I'll have another big box of stuff.
I know. Mantic, is it Mantic? I think it's Mantic that did it, isn't it? So they're pretty good
Mantic,
they're pretty good at kind of getting their follow up kind of waves out. I remember a kind of Star Saga. It's like a continual kind of surprise that keeps giving, because you get Star Saga and you go, yes, I've got Star Saga. And then 6 months later you get a raft of other kind of plastic you wouldn't expect. I'm like, I wasn't expecting all this kind of furniture. What about you, Mr. Paul? Is there anything that's kind of like that's kind of made you excited at the club of recent? I mean, are you more of a kind of a war gamey type guy, or will you jump on the kind of the board games yourself?
I'm more of a miniatures wargamer by inclination. I do like the board games. I like the look of having all the painted miniatures on the board, and just at the moment that seems to be it's the Necromunda's the flavour of the month at the moment.
Oh, right, okay. I do have Necromunda miniatures over there. He says, pointing during a podcast, which makes
it's funny how these things always appear out the woodwork every now and then. You find something.
I've just kind of got them sitting there. They're not painted, but if I show you them at the camera just now, you can see the quality of the painting that I've done. Aren't they amazing looking, gentlemen?
They are fantastic.
That's award-winning stuff.
It's a golden emanity waiting.
It's just the shading. You can see how I've done the individual tattoos around their eyes and their eyelashes. I hope you're impressed. In terms of, because taking on the event itself, taking on the gathering, what possessed you? I mean, did you wake up the next morning and go, oh my goodness, we've just committed to putting together an event?
Yes.
Yes, there was a bit of that. I think when the first emails, obviously we talked about it for a few years, because the Wappenshaw was the last kind of war game show in Glasgow, and I think the last one of that was 2013. And I think they all kind of hoped that either it would come back or somebody else would run one. And after a few years, I think it became apparent that it wasn't going to happen. So I think we decided, right, we're going to have to do that. And as you say, so we started organising it. We came up with a list of people traders would like to invite. We talked to other clubs, such as the guys in Falkirk who run Carronade, who've been a big help. But there certainly was that moment when we sent out the initial emails and people started filling out the online registration form.
Yeah.
It was that kind of like, oh, it's happening, we can pull this off. And then it's like, oh, wait, what have we done?
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing about, oh, I'm getting married. Oh, I've got to now get married. And everything else that kind of gets involved with that kind of organisation and everything like that as well. Did either of you have kind of experience in kind of like running events of this type of nature?
No. I mean, certainly, as I say, we've been to these events and we've talked to, as I say, we talked quite a lot to several of the guys at Falkirk who we're good friends with to get an idea of, look, this is what's going to happen. This is this is the kind of thing you'll need to do, etc. But no, we've no real prior experience beyond obviously running the club, and we try and run. We do like a Saturday kind of gaming day once or twice a year at the club, but nothing. Certainly nothing on this scale.
Yeah.
Nothing. This. It turned out to be awfully official by the time you apply for licenses and bookings and all that, start dealing with the money and everything. There's a lot more to it than I think we'd thought. I think we thought we'd just book a venue, phone some traders, and jobs are good. But
as I say, as Andrew says, having to do things like apply for licenses and then. Say, right, okay, well, how are we going to organise payment? Oh, well, we'll need to do like backs payment and all. It's like all suddenly starts becoming very official when you have to, do that and generate invoices and all these kind of things. But it's been a learning curve. But I think we're slowly getting there. There's certainly lessons we've learned already that if we that hopefully it's successful enough for next year that we would take forward into that. I think.
In terms of like a lot of events have kind of like they seem to have like a couple of main parts. You've got like the traders who are coming in just to to sell their wares. You've got like the play testers as well. It seems to be quite. A lot of them have like open gaming spaces as well. So are you?
Yeah.
I mean, are you looking at kind of what if when somebody walks in to the hall on the 29th between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. What can they expect when they walk into the event?
Well, this year they can expect to have a good range of traders from a lot of war games companies, a lot of retailers selling mixtures of miniatures, board games, roleplay stuff. They can expect to have a lot of demo games on show that they can participate in, ranging from war games of various genres, so historical, sci-fi, fantasy. We've got some board game companies coming along to demonstrate board games. We've even got some of the guys at our club who regularly roleplay. They're going to be running some short intro sessions of Pathfinder, so people can have a try at that. Unfortunately, this year, like you're mentioning with the open gaming space, we physically don't have the space for that. But certainly it's something we'd like to grow into, like open gaming space, having a bring and buy or a flea market type idea for people to trade. It's something we'd like to look at certainly for the coming years, because we know certainly bring and buys are a staple of a lot of shows, wargaming shows. We know, like you're saying about open gaming space, I think that seems to be more a board, like shows that are more board game related.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But I think, but over rather than war game related, but at the same time, it's something we'd like to do because again, it's the kind of thing it can work for war games. Things like Games Workshop with Shadespire. It's a very easy thing to just turn up and you put a mat down and you can play very quickly. Certainly, I think it is something we'd like to do. I think for this year, though, as I say, unfortunately, just with the limit of space we've got, because there's always that thing of you can book as much space as you want, but it costs money, and then if you don't fill it, then that's always that can end up basically cancelling the show for next year. So I think we'd like to try and work on this and work our way up. So
I think part of it is we've all come from the point of view of organising the show. All the shows we've been to previously have basically been like war game shows, which are a 6-hour thing during the day. The games are all sort of pre-arranged and run for you.
Yes.
Only as we've started going to more board gaming events, we were at the Glasgow Games Festival earlier this year, and Tabletop Scotland, and Andy was down at the Games Expo last year.
Yeah.
We're seeing, certainly I'm seeing more of the board gaming side of things, and it's stuff like the open gaming space isn't something I've experienced at a show before, so it wasn't something I'd sort of considered as a thing to have. But now we're it's obvious as we're going on with things, it's certainly it's going on the list for future to try and combine. But
when you're kind of running, the issue with running an event is if you go ahead and if you copy or you do what everyone else is doing, then you don't get your own kind of identity. And like say the Glasgow Games Festival, predominantly it is all about the open gaming space. There was very few. When I went the previous year, there was very few traders. There was there's a much smaller kind of playtest area, and it was predominantly there was kind of like Asmodee were there to demonstrate. They did have, I think they had Haba as well at the time. So they were very, very much open kind of space and open gaming. If you went to when like Tabletop Scotland, they were kind of like a mixture of. They did have a large space for kind of like the open gaming, but they did have an awful lot. They seem to have an awful lot more kind of like terms and playtesting areas. So they had a larger kind of playtesting area, but they also had like a family area as well, and then they also had some like kind of conference stuff off to the side. So the trouble is, if you end up with 5 events all doing the same thing, what's the point in having what's the point of having 5 events at all if they're all kind of going to be the same? You might as well have the same company kind of doing the tour around Scotland, kind of bringing it away. So it's interesting. And also, as we said earlier, the whole kind of wargaming space does seem to have caught a lot of imagination. I mean, recently we've had obviously things like Kill Team, much smaller, faster kind of war-playing games. You've got your Star Wars Legion of this world and things like that as well. And I think you need events like what you're looking to run to encourage people who are on the edge of jumping into the hobby to actually taking that next step. And, it's kind of always kind of interesting. Have you looked at kind of like the family side of things? And I mean, have you got that to think about? Have you got the catering to think about and toilets and all that kind of thing? Is that all something else you've got to kind of look at and consider as well?
Something to consider, although given the venue we're in, the catering and toilet facilities and that sort of thing are all...
Yeah, they're all part of the venue.
So thankfully that's not something we're having to arrange separately.
Right.
If we were,
if
we just had to shed someone who had to get a load of Portaloos and a burger van in, that would be another.
But no, thankfully, as he says, we've got, there's a cafe on site, and obviously they've got all toilet facilities and stuff like this. Because
you could always just nip round to Ibrox and nick the burger van from there. Just what are you doing? I'm just away to I'll bring it back for Saturday. Don't worry, pal.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Just dragging it back to yourself there as well. I mean, is it straight? I mean, obviously for you kind of doing the kind of the promotion for the group, it is just a case of, Jane says, "Oh, I fancy playing some board games. Do you have folk that play board games?" And one of you says, "Aye, if you just come along, then we'll get you sorted out." Is it a different thing for you actually needing to be like the public face of the Glasgow Games group for the gathering? You having to go about and kind of be smiley and obviously contact people to kind of build up the kind of the promotion and make sure people are aware of the event. Has that been kind of like a bit of a baptism of fire, a kind of a new kind of learning skill set that you've had to pick up as well?
I think it has, as you say, with the games group. I mean, we've always done some promotion. We've gone to war game shows and ran demo games and, let people know that we're here. But I think the majority of it has been, as you say, most people who come to us have either been to one of these shows and they know about us, or they find us through the internet. Going out and doing, say, something like this has been a bit of a very big learning curve. You've had to think, right, okay, well, how are we going to promote this? We have to be, more active on things like social media. We have to be, as I say, we're obviously coming on shows like yourself to try and help get the word out about the show. Looking at, okay, well, do we take out magazine adverts, all these kind of things, which we've arranged. Sending around flyers to shops, all these kind of things, and as you say, just trying to be the kind of the public face of it, and basically, as you say, you have to go up and you have to you always have to put your best foot forward, basically, and just build up because obviously you're wanting to build up a relationship with these traders and demo people. You want them to come back and you want them to come to your show, have a good day, for it to be worth their while, and then for them to come back next year. And obviously they will talk to other traders and they will say that, hopefully they will, the idea will be, oh yes, this show was worth it, and eventually we'll end up with enough traders that it becomes worth it to move to a bigger space, and we can get more in. We can grow the show from there. Yeah.
I mean, I was at Aircon at the beginning of March, and I know the organiser quite well. Or I say I know him quite well. He says, stay away from me or I'll set the dogs on you. But I mean, aircon started in a living room. I mean, that's what, Mark's joke about aircon was the first one that he did was actually around at his house, and it was just somewhere where he made too many sandwiches, had too many board games, and things just got out of control. But now he's obviously in the space where he's got a couple of thousand people kind of going through the door, and he's got all those, he's got all those kind of various kind of things going on, and it's one of these things is like, one of my friends says to me, you can't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 10 kind of thing, so you kind of got to build slowly and see where the event kind of grows. But it must be kind of exciting for you, kind of growing something from nothing and kind of building it up,
Yeah, we've been certainly. I know we've got our things we'd like to do in the future. But this one's just going to be a little bit nerve-wracking, I think, until it comes to 6 o'clock on the Saturday and to see how many people we've actually had turn up. I think it's going to be that. That'll be when we know whether we do it again or not. Yeah. So at the moment, as long as we get some people through the door and nothing actually explodes on the day, I think that'll be a success.
Yeah.
It depends if somebody rolls a critical fail or something like that, though. You never know.
As long as it's not me, that's fine.
Have you thought about kind of like ticket prices and things like that? Then have you kind of decided on that?
We have thought about ticket prices. So it's probably going to be more aimed towards, say, the wargaming end. Where there may be only kind of £2-3 for entry. I think mostly because they tend to be shorter shows, and I think part of it is also board game shows. Like we say, tend to have a lot of things like open play space and things. So it's effective. It's a bit like going to, say, a games venue, where you'd be charged table hire. Whereas obviously here there will be demo games, but and we hope lots of people come along and play these games, but you wouldn't be able to, say, either turn up with games and expect a games library, or purchase games on the day and have a space available to play them. And certainly, with the venue we've got and the traders, that's kind of the pricing structure we're looking at so far.
That's a lot more inexpensive than I thought, to be perfectly honest. But then I can see that you want people just kind of going, oh yeah, £3. I'll go in, I'll have a look around, I'll kind of see, I'll see what it is. Most folk, most folks spend more money on a coffee from Starbucks nowadays.
Well, hopefully, if we don't take too much of their money off them at the door, they'll have more to spend on the traders inside, is the hope.
Yeah. And I guess it is the case of, like, they're not going to wait. They're not going to feel, if they walk out and they feel they've got a real sense of satisfaction, they're going to just, like, they'll text their friends. I mean, what social media is like. There'll be somebody that will knock down if you get folk going in at like 10 o'clock and they say, oh, this is fantastic. Went round in a couple of hours. It was a good time to get around. And the other side of it as well is you'll get potentially the dads and the mums dragging the 2 kids about just to go and look at all the, look at some of the war games and stuff like that going on, because it's not, I think the most disappointing experience I ever had was the first time I went to Deep Sea World, and I think it was about £15 a ticket, and you went round in about 25 minutes, and there was lots of lovely fish, but you still went round in 25 minutes, and you kind of walked out the other side going, aye, well, that was a tunnel. And there you go, and you walked kind of on. So it sounds that certainly sounds absolutely kind of more than reasonable. In terms of kind of like things like volunteers, are you going to have kind of folk on at the day to kind of help out, making sure that people don't kind of get lost, that people could, folk you've got answering questions and stuff like that? Is this other things you've got kind of like to think about as well?
Yeah, we're trying to bully as many of our club members as possible into helping out on the day. And if anybody listening to this unaccountably feels they have to help out on the day, then all volunteers are gratefully received.
But no, we've had a good response from the club,
Mm-hmm.
from the club members so far. And yes, certainly we'll obviously we'll have volunteers on the door taking money, handing out tickets, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have, the idea is we'll have a couple of volunteers, 1 or 2 volunteers, always kind of wandering the hall in shifts so that, as you say, if somebody's got a question, if somebody's lost, etc.
Yeah.
Then hopefully they'll be there to help out, or if they don't know the answer, then be able to find someone who will.
Cool. That sounds good. If people have listened along, obviously the plan is to get you guys back in before the event, starts, to find out more about the traders that are going to be there and the demo guys that are going to be there and what they can expect to be there. But if people have listened along and said, "Oh, I'd actually want to find out a little bit more," where can we kind of find you guys on the internet webs, as they would say?
Okay. You can search for us on Facebook under G3 Gamers.
Okay.
That'll bring up our kind of main kind of official club page.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a kind of a more general chat page for just the club members to use.
Okay.
But that should be our official club page, which we use for announcements for traders. So the list of all these things is there.
Okay.
We're also on Twitter at Glasgow G3.
All right. Okay.
Again, we've got we've posted all our kind of trader announcements, etc., and any announcements about the club there. So again, either of these pages or the general chat page are great to kind of come along and interact with us. We post other things as well. We're always here. We're always happy to hear what people are working on, hobby wise. And we've got just a website as well. If people look for it's G3 Gamers or Glasgow Games Group, that webpage should.
It's g3gamers.co.uk.
Yep.
Awesome.
And we're also on Instagram now as, again, G3 Gamers. So
cool. Good.
You can see some photos of what we've been up to.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, I mean, what we'll do is we'll make sure that we'll take all of those links and we'll put them in the show notes, so we've got notes to show. Thank you very, very much for coming on, gentlemen. As I say,
thank you very much for having us on.
We'll get you back on kind of closer at the time to you can kind of tell us tales of what delights we can expect to find at the end of June. For everybody who wants to keep an eye on what we're up to, go to the internet, search for We're Not Wizards. You'll find us all over the place with worn out faces, worn out places like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and yes, and our website we'renotwizards.com, and our blog we'renotwizards.blogspot.com, and you can email us magic@we'renotwizards.com, and you can find us in all the podcast catchery places, all the places with pod, all the places with cast in their name, like Spotify, which has neither got pod or cast in the name, but it's Spotify, so we thought we'd mention it. If you like what you've listened along tonight, and as I say, check out all the links for the Glasgow Games Gathering at the end of June. 2 things you can do. You can tell somebody about us, which is always nice. Or the other thing is you can go to Apple Podcasts and you can drop us a subscription. You can drop us a rating. You can drop us a review. If you're going to drop us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes me big-headed and I'm bad enough as it is. But don't give us 1 star because it'll make me cry, and I'm a fairly ugly crier. Give us 5 because it's in the middle. It's a little bit average. But the people who have not been average, it's Mr. Andrew Paul, it's Mr. Andrew Bussey. They are the Glasgow Games Group. And thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming on. There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, gentlemen?
I don't think I'm a wizard.
Don't.
We are not wizards.
Definitely. There you go. Thumbs up.
Definitely not.
Fantastic. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from El Presidente, Mr. Andrew Paul. Say goodbye, Mr. Paul.
Goodbye, Mr. Paul.
And it's a goodbye from the man with the money, the checkbook controller. He may be busy, but he's also Bussey. It's Andy Bussey. Say goodbye, Andy.
Goodbye, Andy.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful, and until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.